finding these and getting saved?
All right, cool. Let's take a couple brief moments of silence. Invite God into the room, that His will may be done. Third step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee, to fill with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Lead me in the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over men, those I can help, Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Amen. Awesome. So, I just want to sort of bust any lies in here today that people have been believing that I believe for 7 years. Like, a lot of people believe before they get sober, and a lot of people do before they get sober hit bottom. They hit bottom. I hit a bottom before I got sober, but I really hit bottom at 7 years of sobriety thinking I had something. When truthfully I was just as lost at 7 years of sobriety that I believe I was the day God intervened in my life and separated me from alcohol and drugs. And the biggest lie is recovery is not a fad. It's not a trend. Recovery is a position. It's not a feeling. It's a way of life. I mean, are there truthfully people in here that wants to continue to get high? I mean, I'm sure everybody here has an honest desire not to drink and use. I believe that. I don't believe you would be angry, but now, don't get me wrong, I do believe there's some people in here today that don't want to be here. But behind all that, you might want to be somewhere else, but I know you're tired of getting high. Because I know you're tired of the consequences and the life that surrounds that. I do know that. The reason why I know that is because I've been connected with the God who created you. And I know for a fact, whether or not you know it, is the God that created you did not create you to smoke, crack, drink liquor, and do drugs, hurt people, and dishonor God. I do know that. That recovery is about purpose. Powerful men and women of God who overcome addiction and spend their lives dragging people out of the pits of hell. How many people in here believe that recovery begins with the understanding of step one? How many people believe that? It's okay to be honest. How many people today believe that recovery begins with the understanding of step one? If you have your big books, we're going to go through this. We're just going to try to do our best to please God and see what we can do as men and women of God to get closer, right? Everybody wants to get closer and see what they can do to impact, to pack into the stream of life. So we're going to turn to page 96 in our big books. Now, this is chapter 7. I want y'all to understand something. Because there's some people in here that feel useless. And they're hanging on by a thread, but because they can't get rid of the thoughts in their mind of the things that they've done. I had a gentleman talking to me before the meeting, and he's haunted by the things that he's done. He's struggling. He's having a hard time looking at himself. Anybody else have a hard time at looking at themselves in here? That's only 2 or 3 of us. So everybody else embraces a 4-step and is just glad to see what they see. Some people may beg to differ, but I believe the best experience that God gives us
is when He allows us to see ourselves. And the reason why I believe that is because you have never been closer to God when you begin to see the things in your life that you used to not care about. This gentleman was telling me about things the light has revealed to him that before didn't matter. But today it's eating his lunch and he hates what he sees. I want you to know that you've never been closer to God. Because you only see what's dirty in the light. It's when you're not guilty and don't feel convicted about what you clearly know is dishonoring God and hurting people that is scary. And we've all been there, have we not? Have we not all been in a place where we dishonored God by our actions while we hurt people to get what we wanted and truthfully had not a lick of remorse for it? So, as I ask you guys, does recovery begin with the understanding of step one? I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm going to challenge that for you today. I'm going to challenge what you believe, because let me tell you something I'm learning. That even coming up on 10 years of sobriety, I realized that I don't know it all. And I need men and I need women in my life who's willing to challenge what I believe, because sometimes I believe things that is not of God. And when you surround yourself with men and women who are yes men and yes women that agree with everything you say, you in deep, dark trouble. When you become the smartest person in your circle, you need a new circle. Because you've outgrown it. And you surrounding yourself with people that are before you is not what the big book says. It says not only do you surround yourself with people who are behind you, you must surround yourself with people who's beyond you. So I'm just going to challenge the question today, does recovery begin with the understanding of step one? Now, obviously, I'm not starting in the beginning of the book. I'm starting in the 7th chapter. The reason why I'm starting in the 7th chapter is because it's entitled, Working with Others. Did you notice that I didn't say working on others? I'm talking about the one who has left something out on their 5th step that has to work on others to take the look away from them. That chapter you have rewritten and made it working on others, because you can't look or you can't see yourself, because you need to work on others because it's painful to look at those things you've been pushing away. You can't work with others because you're too busy working on others. Somebody hear me in here?
Amen.
Amen.
Well, I worked on others for 7 years. That's why at 7 years of sobriety, my marriage was hanging on by a thread. I wanted to die. Because everything my 5th step that I admitted was objectionable, I continued to do, but used AA as a religion to manage it so I could stay sober. At least you thought I was somebody. I had all the right sayings. I did all the meetings. I helped a bunch of people listening to what y'all thought from the outside looking in. But the truth was I was the most miserablest person you ever met. Because the one ingredient that makes these steps work I left out, which was obedience to God. Buddy, you can use AA as a religion, and you can manage the things you admit is objectionable. But you better believe eventually you're going to be the one people talks about, runs away for it 10 years of sobriety.
Amen.
Page 96, working with others. Listen, I just come to challenge you and go back to Anderson. I'll let your leaders distinguish between what gets brought up today, but at least it's getting brought up and you got to take a look at it, whatever that may be. It could be the fact that you've been trained to believe some things that ain't necessarily the truth. I don't know about y'all, but I spent many years with some ideas that necessarily didn't benefit me or the people around me. Sort of institutionalized, you know. And you could tell that my love for God wasn't true by the way I treated you. To look at another human being who was having the same trouble that I did, that grace changed me, to tell them to shut the cup was absurd. In front of everybody else, to humiliate them to make me look better, when the truth is I probably was the one that needed to shut up. You want me to tell you what recovery is about, Clifton?
Yeah.
Recovery is about taking a role called servant. You want me to tell you tonight if you were a servant or not? You know the best way to tell if you were a servant of God and all you care about is recovered alcoholics finding Him and not you getting promoted on your ego based on what they tell other people about. You want to know the difference? You'll know that you're a servant of God and you care about drug addicts when you get treated like one, how you act. When someone in these recovery houses, as you a senior, and someone at 3 days treats you like a servant, and you respond to them that they're wrong like most of us do, you can tell that ego's bigger than God. Listen, guys. I do not come here with somebody that's got it all together. I come here a man screaming and crying in the wilderness of someone who should have been drunk. And I know today the only reason why God spared my life at 7 years is because He sent me back in to bust lies in the mouth that people are believing that's getting them drunk. And He said, you're going to lose some friends and they're going to not like you. But I didn't tell you that recovery was a trend. I said it was a purpose. Now go do it. You want to be a soldier for God, you want to reach into the gutter to help drug addicts, then you better get ready to lose some friends. I'm glad I got us all together. Because the one thing I see in our recovery community is cliques. And a bunch of people who has the same pattern of getting here, serving the same God for one purpose. It's really heartbreaking to know that we clicked up. Division. Separation. Tearing people down because they said what you said, but just in different language. Come on, somebody's hearing me. Somebody's saying exactly what you're saying about the first step, but because the owl's nest taught you this way, they wrong. Talking to somebody. You're looking at somebody who went into AA self-righteous, telling people what they were doing wrong, when the truth was is God sent me there for them to tell me what I didn't know. But because it was instilled in me that I only knew the right way, I instantly put myself out of the position of being a servant. No wonder I had to run to meetings that's scared to get high. No wonder I had to get in and out of relationships over and over again, because I missed the whole thing this offers, which is the peace that comes from God. But it's impossible to have the peace of God and smoke crack. If you've got the peace of God, no matter how much, you can't smoke crack. If you are walking in the fellowship of the Spirit of God, you cannot get drunk. You can't. How many of you know that when you build a house, that what's the most important foundation? I just told you. I suck at that. But I just sort of want you to understand how powerful God is and who He used to write this book. Okay? Bill Wilson and these other guys were people just like you. Okay? Some were highly educated, some had higher roles, but they were all drunks. And yet He chose these men to do powerful things, to write a book that we're still talking about today. But if we lose the sight of their vision to add and implement our opinions, this dies. That's why the success rate is 6%. At the time when they stuck to the vision of what was given, it was 95%. Do you realize that people perish because there is no vision? And when you take the vision of what this was meant to do out of the way to add in what you want to because you don't want to change, you hurt people. And you don't see any results. Now, statistically, I would say in a room this size, you might get 10 people to stay sober 10 years. You might, based on the statistics today. But then, majority of you would stay sober for a lifetime. So before I offer you the benefits that come with these 12 steps in this program, I must not do you a disservice and tell you the things it's going to require of you. Before I go, and I could come here to you and tell you all the great promises that the big book offers you, but it's imperative that you realize that these promises are produced by some things that you must do. I often use this analogy. If a telemarketer calls you, sometimes you hang on to the phone call a couple minutes because they start off with all the good things, don't they? Man, you're going to get a 3-day, 4-night, blah, 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 swimming pool. It's going to be this, and it sounds good. You hang on for a second. That's why most people who think they have an encounter with God eventually fall away, because we tell them all the things that's offered to them, but we don't tell them the requirements that it's going to consist of in order to keep them. If I promised you a seamless and problemless past, and then tomorrow you leave and have problems, then you're going to think you did something wrong. And then you're going to start measuring God's love for you based on what you're going through, and you take your eyes immediately off God and you just think, man, I've done everything. This ain't working for me. Am I talking to anybody in here? So thinking about these guys that wrote this book, 66 women. No, I'm kidding. I didn't mean that in a negative way. I just got mixed up. It's actually 66 men and one woman. Because it takes one woman to control 66 men. But I want you to think about this. Truthfully, 66 men, one woman. 67 people wrote the big book. Would anybody disagree? Anybody throwing that big book around because it don't make any sense? Anybody frustrated because they're reading the big book and it's just making you mad because it don't really make sense? Anybody? Am I the only one that used to throw that book around and say, man, you got me reading a book telling me this is going to save my life, but I can't even finish reading the first page because I had to reread it 20 times. You telling me to read the book and it's taking me 5 months because I can't get by the first chapter. Right?
Right.
Listen, this is the problem. They didn't say understand it. They just said read it. But your whole life have been pushed to your thinking, getting you through what that thinking created that's got you in the situation you're in. You telling me that your thinking has created most of your problems, yet you come to think your way out of it that ain't never worked. So you tell me that 66 men and one woman wrote this book right here, and yet agreed upon one thing? That's like me thinking that Cliff's going to like Clemson, man. I mean, it's like saying everybody in here loves Clemson. You really think all these alcoholics in here is going to leave liking Clemson? Let's hope not, right? It's not going to happen, but yet 66 men and one woman left, and this book was written, and they all agreed upon it. That tells you they didn't write it. That tells you it was inspired by something so much greater than them. But how dare you want to understand something that was written by God and you have no connection with Him? You cannot understand a book that was inspired by God when you're blocked from God. It's just like an alcoholic to want from the beginning what it says without doing what it says. Some of you sitting around waiting on a good feeling before you decide to leave. You might as well go ahead and call your ride because the good feeling ain't coming. In order for feelings to follow, you must do. You ever waited around or said, if I get this in place, I get that in place, and when this happens and I can get this, I'll have peace? You ever said that? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then get this, and once this falls into place, I'll find peace. But yet God is screaming at you saying, if you will find peace, all those things will fall into place. You're worried about what you're going to drink. You're worried about what you're going to wear. You're worried about where you're going to get food. You're worried about how you're going to pay your bills. Yet you've taken your eyes off the God who has promised to fulfill every single one of those. And yet you can't get out of the way of Him long enough for Him to blow your mind. Think about a bird. You know, God says He feeds the birds. And I'm pretty sure we're a little more important than birds. Wouldn't you think? We're a little more important than a bird, okay? But do you see a bird hanging off a branch with his mouth open to heaven waiting for a worm to fall out of it? He just sitting there waiting for the bird, it's going to fall out and I'm going to be full. This worm about to fall out of the sky. You see, that's our misunderstanding of God. See, God did promise to feed the birds. The bird just understood the worm was provided. He knew he had to get off the branch and go get it.
Amen.
You see, God's promised to provide your food and your drink and your clothes and your job and your future husband or wife. Yet you're too busy looking to do what only He can do and getting into the way of Him blowing your mind. Stop worrying about the job you're going to get. Just get off your tail and go look. It's God's job to provide the job. It's your job to just go look. See, it's God's job to provide your husband. It's your job to be prepared for him. But see, y'all looking for him. Boy, I'm talking to somebody now. If I get off this track, we all going to be in trouble. You hear me, ladies? I share this every time I go. Because I know the 12 steps ain't producing no results when we just swap in addictions. I've been sober 2 years, but I've been in an unhealthy relationship for a year, but I love God. Crying yourself to sleep. Wondering where he's at. Who he's with. Am I talking to anybody? That old thinker's broken, ain't it? Anybody else's thinker broken? I mean, we've talked about this before, ain't we, Holly? Get sober 90 days, I think I should get married. Oh, don't make no sense. Am I talking to anybody, or am I just preaching to myself? I mean, I spent 7 years writing the same inventory just with different names thinking I was successful. I'm growing up. Until a man who loved me enough to say, don't bring no more step work back to me until you change. Because all you doing is doing the same thing just with different people. And you ain't fooling nobody but yourself. Because all you are is a listener of what he said and you ain't never done it. But you steady telling other people what to do and you ain't got a lick of nothing to transmit them. You just need them to stay sober because you ain't got a lick of God in you. But you think at 7 years, out of all the people I so-called helped, on the floor crying out to God because I was somebody, to realize I really never scratched the surface? That's the bottom that I hit in recovery. And it was only by the grace of God that I didn't have to come back and get a white chip. Nothing else. So you want to know why I'm passionate? You know why I want to speak the truth? Is because somebody's going to leave here today the different direction. Somebody came in here believing they knew something, and they're going to leave a different direction because God's going to humble them and produce something in them that only He can. I promise you, we don't need any more step workers. We got enough of people working the steps. I'm talking people who live them. We need some people to live them. I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired. I was tired of writing a 4-step every other week. I was tired of writing a 4-step every other week. And I was only writing it so I'd feel better about doing what I know I shouldn't be doing. I had no intentions writing a 4th and a 5th step to change anything. I just knew God would give me a little relief if I did. And then I would take that grace that was undeserved to a person like me that was in the gutter, and I'd just use it to my advantage. And I'd say, God will forgive me. How backwards did I have it? That I would take a priceless gift like grace that was given to someone who didn't deserve it and then turn around and use it to satisfy me. And then use you to continue to live a disobedient life. Because, hey, I'm just staying sober. Think about what it says right here. Top of 97. It says, never avoid what? These responsibilities. But be sure you are what? Doing the right thing if you assume them. Somebody read this out loud for me, the next sentence. All together. Helping others
Is the foundation stone of your recovery.
is the foundation stone of your recovery. So think about this. As that telemarketer is promising you all these great things on the phone, what happens when he starts telling you the price it's going to cost to do it? Somebody with me?
You hang up.
What happens when they tell you the price that you got to pay to enjoy what they just presented to you?
Hang up.
You hang up. The reason why we start in the seventh chapter is because without recovered, purpose-driven alcoholics and drug addicts who have sought this solution and know the facts about themselves, there is no future.
That's right.
Without recovered alcoholics, there's no hope for recovering alcoholics. And for me to put you into something to hope that I can get you sober without showing you what the price it's going to cost for the rest of your life, I just did you a disservice. Because I think something I know is better than what this book has written. Something what? Was 34 to this day, what? 70 years, 75 years? How old's AA? 81 years? So you're telling me that the price that I pay for the freedom that comes with sobriety is giving my life up as a living sacrifice for people just like me. Why would I do you like a telemarketer to lean you up to finally one time say, well, yeah, your life depends upon helping others. And this whole time you thinking you're doing this to benefit yourself. When the truth is you let God change you so that you can change others. You know, this faulty big book preaching produces faulty alcoholics. That's just like Christianity. A faulty gospel produces faulty Christians. Half gospel is no gospel at all. Half truth is no truth at all. So if I care about your life, then I might want to invest my time in you instead of running you through a process that somebody told me to do just because I want to stay sober and live how I want to. Because, I mean, it's not my opinion. You just agreed, or I told you, I hope you agreed, that the foundation stone is the most important part of the structure. Yeah, this is the last stone we put in place. I heard someone tell me that the ones who listen to the Word yet don't do it, it's like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. When the problems and the storms come, guess what? Knocks it down. But yet the wise man who was a listener and a doer of the Word built his house on rock. And when the wind and the storm comes, it didn't shake him. Matter of fact, what it did was because of your healthy foundation, the wind came and knocked some of the rotten boards out because the storm was intended to make you a better person, not to be on top of you. The storm is, hey listen, write this down in your diary real quick. The storm is a tool in God's hand, but you steady blaming the devil for what you're going through. And God's saying, I sent the storm to knock off the things that's going to rob you of the blessing you can't see.
That's right.
Well, I'm really talking now, ain't I? Woo! Somebody wrote that down. I can see you, because that didn't come from me. We steady walking around to think God's intended to make us better. But we can't go through the storm because we're not on foundation that's unshakable. Y'all building to avoid the storm, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm building to weather it because I know it's coming.
Yep.
And I'm welcoming it today because now I see I'm about my Father's business. And there's some things in me that's going to destroy that business. So God, send the storm because there's some things you need to get out of me. But we don't go into the steps to say, God, get this out of me. We go into the steps to get something from God so we can keep it. It isn't that the steps don't work. It's that the steps tried you and you don't work. I come back crawling in here, but Bradley, I did everything I was supposed to. It looks like to me that there's some promises in this book that says you'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. You'll be walking on a broad highway hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. I promise you, it ain't got nothing to do with the 12 steps. It was written by God whose word does not return void.
That's right.
So I'm sure it tried you and you didn't work. Just like it tried me and I didn't work, man. I used to crawl to my sponsor all the time, crying about my problems and saying, man, I'm going to meetings, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Doing everything I'm supposed to. But the truth was I wasn't doing anything I was supposed to. I don't believe recovery starts in the first step. I believe recovery starts in the third tradition, in the third forward to this book. It says at the bottom that recovery begins when one alcoholic shares his experience, strength, and hope with another alcoholic. You telling me that I got to go sit and study with somebody before God can show me something? I mean, you've been telling people until they get to a fourth step they can't experience God. I'm talking about the God who came to you when you were unlovable, pulled you out of place when you didn't even know He was doing it. You telling me and these people that they got to do something to experience a God that don't need nothing from you.
That's right.
If these steps were intended to give you a relationship with God, every single one of us is in trouble. I would put my money on the fact that these steps was meant to help you to experience the reality of the God who's already been working in your life. Because to think you sitting here because you chose to be here is absurd. It's important that you know that God has been working in your life way before this big book ever thought to do anything in you. To say that this book can replace God is absurd too. To tell me I need to write a fourth step before I can have a relationship with God is absurd. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I like to know that when I was unlovable at my worst, God still came to me and picked me up and swept me off and said, "You are the one that I love." Nobody taught me that in AA. Nobody. It was always about, Bradley, you ain't doing enough. You need to do more of this. You need to do more of that. And then God might help you. What? The truth was I needed to stop doing what I was so that God that was with me could help me. Do you think that God at 1 year sobriety wants you to run to a meeting out of fear of getting drunk? I spent 2 years of my life in Florence, South Carolina, running to meetings because I was scared to death I was going to get drunk. Because a man looked at me and said because I was making mistakes that was intended to make me a better person, because I was making a mistake, I was going to get drunk. When did mistakes stop being the best thing that ever happened to us? Imagine if we got out of the way and let the big book do what it was intended to do and stopped trying to save people. Is anybody with me?
Yes, sir.
Did you know that the same 12 steps that can help you is still the same 12 steps that can help her? But just because she's a crack addict don't mean I got to rush her through because the allergy of the body's worse. That's me playing God in her life and robbing her of the experience He brought her here. When I rush her through a program and miss some steps, I'm saying the God that went and got her and brought her here ain't good enough to save her. Like, I hope y'all know that the God who loves you, that's going to do the work in you, is the one who's got you here. The one who's going to keep you here. and the one who's going to give you a future. Do you know why what you're going through is important? And do you know why what you're going through is imperative that you face it and that you work through it? Do you want to know why? Does anybody want to know why what they're going through and what's going on in their life is important that they face it and get through it? Because some of you's thinking, if this is the best it can be, I don't even want to live anyway. I'd rather just go ahead and leave. I'd rather go ahead and forget this. I'd rather just go ahead and just give it all up, because though I'm sober a couple weeks, I've never been able to stay sober. I'm talking to somebody because you were retread, and because somebody's been trying to implement a man-made solution and getting in the way of the God who can change you, you've become discouraged because you don't think you're good enough. I'm talking to somebody. You're tired of being institutionalized. You're tired of coming through every 2 years to get sober. You're tired of having to humble yourself. The people that you've been sponsoring is now having to sponsor you. I mean, this is real life, right? I mean, we real people with real problems dealing with real issues. I mean, there ain't no better place than just talk about it, is it? I'm tired of just going in meetings and getting some really good things and feeling better leaving and wanting to kill myself even more. I mean, somebody's got to hear me here. Like, we go to church every Sunday, raise our hands and sing all these great songs, but leave defeated. And as long as we got enough people at church to make it look like we're doing something, I could care less if you fall off by the wayside. But like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired of singing these songs and being defeated. I'm tired of sitting in these meetings feeling like I don't have no purpose. Check this out. This is beautiful. I can go from 0 to 100 if y'all didn't know that. But never mistake my passion for arrogance, because it really isn't. I iron my laundry because apart from God, I'm as powerless today that He met me. I ain't got a lick of power. Any good you ever see me do is because of the perfection of Jesus. That's it. That's the only good in me, is what He does through me. And the only good He does through me is not based on my effort, it's based on me laying down my effort. You want to be used by God? You want to live in your full potential? Quit trying to do what you've never been able to do. And when that person comes up and says, "Hey man, I see some things you don't say they hating on you, just welcome the correction. Go back and examine what they're saying. If there's some truth in it, then utilize it in your life." Like, we are the most weirdest people I've ever met in my life. One second I love God and want to help people, and then the next minute when somebody's trying to teach me how to love God and help people, I get offended by what they're showing me. Am I the only one? Like, I love God, right? I want to help people. And then like 3 weeks later, I'm doing something that I admitted to my sponsor in a fifth step that was objectionable to a healthy relationship with God. And when I'm in a fifth step, I'm saying, "Hey, honey, could you just please let me know if I get out of line sometime?" Y'all realize that's what you're doing when you do a fifth step. You're telling your sponsor, these are things that I'm saying I cannot do and have a healthy relationship with God. So if you see some of these things in my life, if you could just let me know, that would be awesome. Fast forward about 2 months ahead, Coming in a meeting, I've been out of the recovery house for 1 month. I walk in a meeting, got another girl that just got out of the recovery house for a month, walked in, yeah. That's okay. But then my behavior begins to change and you can't get me. I'm telling you I'll do one thing and I do another. When I'm supposed to be helping you do a 5th step, I push it off for a month because I got other plans. And then that lovely guy you asked, or girl you asked to hold you accountable, just picks up the phone and says, something ain't right. I think you might be having a little unhealthy dependence upon a person. Maybe we can get back to square one and iron this out. You hating on me. Cuss them out. You hang up on them. Go to a different meeting so you don't see them, and you talk about them at that meeting, and you make those people think they're the bad guy when truthfully you're the one deceived, and you get them to like you, but then when you get drunk you wonder why.
Come on.
And we blame Satan for deceiving ourselves. I think he sits back and laughs at us because we blame him and he ain't even had to do nothing yet. This thing called self is serious. Self is serious. I'm talking about a self that can't see it. Self. I want to read something to you. Because I think what we need more of is we need more relationships. Okay? And this is what I mean by that. If I'm reading out of the 7th chapter, then I'm obviously talking about someone working with someone else. There's a relationship there. I'm not talking about, see, most of the time we have a problem because you're not sponsoring me yet. You're going out of your way to tell me what you think I need to change. But yet you can't love me when I was at my worst. You've been talking about me the whole time. But yet you think you need to point out what I need to do better. Is somebody hearing me? Mm-hmm. You quick to go out of your way to point out something somebody needs to change, yet 3 days ago you couldn't love them when they were at their worst. I mean, you can't help somebody with a 12-step process and lose the character of God while doing it. You ever got mad at somebody when they didn't do what you wanted them to do? You ever got mad at a sponsee that didn't do what he said he was going to do? And then you told him he was going to get drunk? But like if the power is in the tongue, and it speaks death or life, and I speak that into their life, I'm encouraging that. Only truth breaks down lies. So regardless of what I may know the outcome is, I still need to speak life into them. I still need to speak life into them. Check this out. Does anybody know why it says the foundation stone is helping others? I'm going to close with this because I don't even know what time it is. 5:30. What time we start? 4:30? Okay, I'm going to close with this. I pray that this changes someone's perception of what we do around here in recovery, and I pray we start implementing this instruction in our life. It says, helping others is the foundation stone of our recovery. Now, why would I need to know this before I really ever do anything? Because you're telling me, someone who feels useless and hopeless, that I need to help others. Pretty much. I'm talking about people who, when they come here, is broken, that can't help themselves. More or less, you sitting here telling me I need to help other people. Well, how many people know that experience sometimes is the greatest thing to have?
That's right.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this in the most loving way that I possibly can.
Don't sugarcoat it.
It won't be sugarcoated. It's just going to be, may the meditations of my heart, Lord, and the words of my mouth please you. That's my aim today. May the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth please you, God. May the motives of what I'm doing be pleasing to you, God. May I help people because I genuinely want to help them, not because I want to use them to stay sober. To continue to do what I know I shouldn't be doing. May the meditations of my heart and the words of my mouth be pleasing to you, oh God. I don't care how much you know about this big book. Some of you can quote it more than I can. For you Christians, I don't care how much you know about theology or how sound your doctrine is. If you can't transfer this and allow others to experience the reality of it, it's useless. If you can't take what you know and it benefit others, it's useless. Why do you think Bill Wilson wrote his story in the beginning of this book? Because he wanted to take what he knew and put it with his experience, because he knew that was the only thing that would win your confidence. Because he knew relationship was the only avenue to do it. Not somebody on a spiritual hilltop from the top coming down at you, somebody willing to get off their top and come down to where you are. And this is what I see on page 12. I want y'all to think about this, boy. I'm excited. Y'all sitting there like, I wish this was over, and I'm up here saying, y'all can go ahead and go, because I'm excited. You know what I'm saying? But everything that I've said today can be summed up in Ebby Thatcher and Bill Wilson's experience at his house. And everything that they experienced through relationship here began to produce something that we know today as powerful. An altruistic movement. A selfless act, no profit involved, wanting to give his time because he had purpose and he was empowered by God. Not because he wanted to live a dishonest life to make his ego bigger, but because he cared about alcoholics and was willing to invest his time with them. I'm not saying you're not going to make mistakes and get in bad relationships. I'm saying stop justifying and rationalizing what you know ain't right. We all going to make mistakes. This whole thing is about how to learn to make better decisions by eliminating mistakes. But when I come to you to help you like you asked me to do and you look at me like I'm an idiot, I can't help you. Like, you know what the first thing you should say to a sponsee before you ever do anything? I just thought about this. This is what you need to say. I'm talking about the one crying. You know, got you feeling bad. You know, like they broke and we got to do. You know, they just got drunk yesterday. They broke and we need to put them back in a bed. Yeah, that's helping them. So much for what the big book says, that we walk around thumping all the time, but we ain't doing a lick of what it says. I mean, the book I read and working with others shows the best way to help them, yet that's the last thing we do. Because this ain't AA, I'm in a treatment facility. We got our own rules. But yet the minute somebody in your treatment center says something this don't say, you're going to get rid of them. It says it's not the matter of giving that's in question, but when and how. Often that makes the difference in success or failure. I don't care if a person's crying in front of you, squalling because they've been sober 2 months and now they drunk. The truth is that right there could be worldly sorrow. That right there might just be a cry of wanting to feel better. This is my question. Do you want to feel better? Or do you want healing? Because they're two totally different experiences. I can save you from yourself so that you'll like me and go tell everybody else how good I am, but yet be hurting you because the book says above helping others is the foundation stone, that I can possibly aid in your destruction. By putting my work on a service plan and letting you rely upon it ahead of God. You know that gutter that people make themselves in? Sometimes it's good for them to just let them stay there. Kip, the hardest thing you ever done was leave your son in jail, wasn't it? That was the hardest thing you've ever went through. I would have to say close. But imagine if you would have went and got him. He may not be where he's at today. Oh, sometimes the best help we can offer is no help at all. Sometimes you just got to say, I don't know how to help you, buddy. And did you know that when the help you give them that's in this book ain't working, you don't have to come up with some more help to give them? We do that, don't we? I offer them the simple instructions of how to get sober, yet they don't want to do that, so I'll find some other things for them to do. You know, sometimes you just can't help a man that don't have a desire to want to get healing. And you know what? That feeling sucks, don't it? To watch a man that you know grace could save their life but unwilling to accept it and receive it. And there ain't nothing you can do about it. Check this out. What page did I tell y'all?
12.
I don't think that's it. Yes, it is. My friend suggested, page 12, second full paragraph, my friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? This statement hit him hard. It melted the icy intellect mountain in whose shadows I had lived and shriveled many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. I was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a what?
Foundation.
I can't hear y'all. Upon a what?
Foundation.
Of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Check out what Eddie Thatcher did. Based on his selfless act of going and pursuing Bill Wilson at the time didn't think that he could help people, but he did think that whatever his friend had, God could possibly do it through him. And instantly he had hope. Do you guys realize that you don't have to know how sick you are in order to get well? Come on. Anybody hear me? You don't have to know how sick you are to get better, yet you've been on the first step for 4 months. Like I get the allergy of the body and the thinking, right? You get that? But really the whole intention of the first step is to show you that you don't have a chemical problem, you got a spiritual problem. That's simple, ain't it? You don't need to stop drinking. You need to surrender your life so God can do that for you. But I'm getting sober. Don't we say that? I'm getting sober. Guys, let's stop forgetting where we come from, man. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked it. It meant the leveling of pride, the confession of shortcomings that this process requires for its successful consummation. That's at 1 day, 2 months, or 5 years. The solution's still the same. You still got to level your pride. You still got to search yourself. You still got to confess your shortcomings for consummation in your life. You don't get drunk because of your mistakes. You get drunk because you can't quit lying about them. You're not drunk because of an unhealthy relationship that you've been in, because God said there's no temptation known to man that I won't give you another avenue out of. So if you fail the temptation, you are meant to learn something from it. But yet when He came in to bring you out of it, you said, "Nah, I got this." Because you was unwilling to level your pride, search yourself, confess your shortcomings, so that His grace could do in you what He did the day He met you. You just stayed in it to conform God to your will, and you ran to more meetings. Right? God comes in, right? He intervenes through people to show you something, to offer you a way out. Yet what you're convinced of, because you've lived in a situation that you shouldn't be in so long, you've believed that what you're in is the truth, and you've exchanged it for the lie. And never once when I was in that bad relationship did it ever dawn on me, maybe I just don't need to be in it. The first response to our situations and problems at 2 years is never surrender. It's what can I do? Amen. We start exerting our will, don't we? We start trying harder. And the more we exert and the more we try, the more problems we run into, don't we? And eventually, what's the result? We believe this lie. Screw it. Don't we? I don't care anymore. I'm looking for some leaders in this group of people who's willing to put themselves in a position to be talked about. I'm talking about somebody who's willing to put themselves in a position to lose some friends so that God can be glorified. We got enough chameleons, man. We got enough people willing to adapt to the people they're in. We got that. I'm talking about people who's willing to set aside self, embrace the calling that God has on their life, and start allowing Him to use you to teach other people how to live. Because no matter what you do, you will never be satisfied until you find what your purpose is and you spend the rest of your life doing it. I don't care how much money you find, what job you get, how many people in AA you help, and how many years that you do it. If you don't embrace the purpose God created you to do and give up what gets in the way of doing that, you will never be satisfied. There's no feeling like being right dab smack in the middle of the calling God has on your life. And I promise you, your calling ain't to stay sober. Your calling is to serve God, to teach others how He can keep them sober. When you serve God and you obey Him, sobriety is just a byproduct of that. Amen?
Amen.
All right, y'all get one more hour with me tonight. Hope y'all can make it. But listen, the reason why I take this time to be as real as I can is because you very rarely get this opportunity. So I pray today that anything that you heard today that has brought something up in you, seek out your sponsor and discuss it, talk about it, seek God through the issue, and allow Him to help you overcome it. Do you know that God has forgiven you of everything that you've ever done wrong? Everything. If you say, God, will you forgive me of this? Guess what? He forgives you. Point blank. God will forgive you of everything you did. But grace doesn't only mean pardon. Grace means power to overcome what you consistently keep asking Him to forgive you for.
Yep.
If you only using grace to be forgiven for sin, you've missed the gift of grace. Grace is power. It's meant to help you overcome the things that's been plaguing you for 10 years. Stop settling. Let's close.